Markets in turmoil. Dollar surges. Global stocks fall amid inflation tariff fears. In a dramatic turn of events, the US dollar surged ahead while the global stock index took a nosedive, all under the looming shadow of inflation and tariffs. This week has been a roller coaster ride for investors, with the US dollar index climbing as MSCI's global equities gauge fell, despite some impressive megacap earnings reports. The markets are on edge, waiting for President Donald Trump's deadline for trade agreements, which has added to the uncertainty and volatility. Let's dive into the details. On Thursday, the US dollar index saw a significant rise, while the global stock index took a hit. This was partly due to the Bank of Japan's decision to keep interest rates steady, which led to the dollar gaining against the yen. Meanwhile, Mexico's peso experienced a boost on the news of tariff negotiations. Investors are holding their breath for more clarity on trade, with the August 1st deadline looming. President Trump granted Mexico a 90-day reprieve from higher tariffs to negotiate a broader trade deal. However, the deadline for most other countries is fast approaching, and higher final duty rates are expected. This has created a tense atmosphere in the markets, with investors anxiously awaiting the outcome. The economic data released earlier in the day showed that U.S. inflation increased in June, as tariffs on imports started to raise the cost of some goods. This supports economists' expectations that price pressures will pick up in the second half of the year. Additionally, fewer Americans applied for unemployment benefits than expected, and second-quarter U.S. labor costs increased slightly more than anticipated. The Federal Reserve kept rates steady on Wednesday, and Chair Jerome Powell stated that the central bank needs more data before deciding on rate adjustments in September. This decision sent equities lower and drew criticism from President Trump. Despite this, indexes received some support from better-than-expected results from Microsoft and Meta platforms. However, by the end of the day, any gains had vanished. With the economic data seemingly backing the Fed's more hawkish stance and the anticipation of Friday's payroll report, investors have had a lot to handle this week. Kevin Gordon, a senior investment strategist at Schwab, noted that the market is in a tight range, with megacap strength countering weakness elsewhere, particularly in small-cap companies. The Russell 2000 small-cap index ended down 0.93%, and the S&P 600 small-cap index fell 1.17%. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 330.30 points, or 0.74%, to 44,130.98, and the S&P 500 was down 23.51 points, or 0.37%, to 6,339.39, with only 2 of its 11 major industry sectors showing gains. The Nasdaq Composite fell 7.23 points, or 0.03%, to 21,122.45. For the month, the S&P 500 gained 2.17%, and the Nasdaq rose 3.7%, while the Dow added 0.08%. MSCI's gauge of stocks across the globe fell 5.31 points, or 0.57%, to 929.02. The Pan-European Stock 600 index finished down 0.75% at a more than one-week low, as European investors were disappointed by corporate earnings reports and the impact of U.S. tariffs on beverage makers. In the currency market, the U.S. dollar is eyeing its first monthly gain for 2025 against major currencies. Supported by hopes for clarity on trade policy and U.S. economic resilience, the dollar index, which measures the greenback against a basket of currencies, rose 0.26% to 100.05. The euro was up 0.08% at $1.1413, and the Mexican peso strengthened 0.23% versus the dollar at 18.854. However, against the Japanese yen, the dollar strengthened 0.84% to 150.76 after the Bank of Japan held interest rates steady and increased its inflation forecast. In the oil market, prices fell 1% after rising in each of the prior 3 sessions. Investors are considering the extension of an existing trade deal between the U.S. and Mexico and a surprise build in U.S. crude stocks, which is putting pressure on prices. U.S. crude settled down 1.06%, or 74 cents at $69.26 a barrel, while Brent settled at $72.53 per barrel, down 0.97%, or 71 cents on the day. Gold prices rose as traders turned to the safe haven asset on tariff uncertainty. Spot gold rose 0.51% to $3,291.55 an ounce. This week has been a whirlwind for investors, with the U.S. dollar's rise and the global stock index's fall, all under the watchful eye of inflation and tariffs. The markets are on high alert, waiting for President Trump's deadline for trade agreements and the potential impact on the global economy. Stay tuned for more updates as the situation unfolds.